Hi, this is Jimmy from The Productive Engineer. Have you ever been working in Evernote and wished that some of your checkboxes that you generated in a note ended up in Todoist so you could track them in your task management application? Well, there are a couple of different ways you could do that, and I'm going to cover one of them in this video today, basically showing you how, by using the Pleexy service, you can create tasks in Evernote that sync it to Todoist, and then once they're in both, being able to check them off in either one or mark them complete in either one and have it sync to the other. At first, you'll have to say, well, why do I want to do that? A lot of times you'll be working in an application like Evernote and you'll be typing notes like meeting notes or something like that, and you have a couple of to-dos that kind of pop up. It's like, oh, here's some things I have to do. And you can create them in Evernote, but then they're not in Todoist, and you have to replicate that data. Or you have to stop in Evernote, go into Todoist, put those to-dos into Todoist, and then go back to Evernote and recapture your line of thinking. There's a little bit of friction there, and if you're spending a lot of time in these applications, it may make sense to automate that, where you can actually just, as you create them in Evernote, they sync up into Todoist, and you don't have to worry about double entry. It automatically syncs over, and then all you have to do is go into Todoist and mark them off as you complete them, and then once you mark them off in Todoist, it automatically checks them off in Evernote, which is really kind of cool to me. Now, before we get started with the tutorial, if you like this video, please click the like button, as it really helps out my channel. If you want to see more videos about how to do things in apps like Todoist, Evernote, Notion, or a variety of other applications, you really should be subscribed to this channel, because as I've said in several of my other videos, that's what we do here. We look at applications, we figure out how to get things done in those applications, and I create tutorials based on that. So I have a wide variety of tutorials on my channel. My channel is continuing to grow and add more videos. I add at least one video a week, sometimes 2 videos a week. I'm trying to get to the 2 level, so hopefully I'll get there. And just that's basically what the channel is. It's just churning out tutorial videos on how to do things in these productivity apps. And lastly, if you want to be notified when I release a new video, please click the bell. Thanks. Yeah, let's get started. So in order to integrate Evernote with Todoist, the service I'll be using for this tutorial is Pleexy. Pleexy is a service that basically acts as a connector between task management applications, and there's actually 2 that they support today, Todoist and Microsoft To Do, and various productivity applications like Evernote, Asana, Trello, and others. So we're going to be doing the Evernote to Todoist integration for this video, and signing up for Pleexy is really easy. All you have to do is go to Pleexy.com, and I'll leave a link in the description, and it actually leverages your existing Todoist and Evernote connections, so there's no net new login that you have to create. It actually leverages your existing ID for like Todoist. So when you sign up, it'll ask you whether you want Todoist or Microsoft. You choose Todoist in this case. It will ask to use your Todoist ID. You'll click on that. If you're already logged in, it'll ask for permission. I'll give you a permission screen. You say okay. If not, you'll have to log in and then say okay. And then the next step is choosing which service. It has a list of the services in there. You just click on which service you want and then authorize it, just like you typically do in other services, like If This Then That in Zapier as an example. Once you've done that, you'll have a screen that looks a lot like the one I have here for Evernote. So there's a couple of different things here. Number 1 is source, and this is going to take basically the settings the criteria that you're going to use to determine whether this Evernote note should be synced over to Todoist. So there's 2 default basic settings here. There is a select notes with any and then notebooks. In this case, this is my setup, so I've actually decided that I have a dedicated notebook for this, which is Todoist integration test in Evernote. If I were to take that out, for example, by Xing it out, it'll say any notebook here. If I click on it, it'll actually show all my notebooks. If I click here and I wanted to sort by tags, let's say I had a tag like to do, as an example, like TODO. I can have like to do this test or to do. I can use a tag. So what will happen is if I create that note and I realize, oh, this has to-dos in it, I want in Todoist, all I can do is just go up and click on, that, add that tag, and then what will happen is Pleexy will go over and basically say, hey, I see that tag, I need to push this into Todoist. But what I've done for the purposes of this demo, I've actually created a Todoist notebook in Evernote, and basically anything that goes into that notebook that has been updated within the last 45 days, which is any new note I create between now and 45 days ago, or any note that's older than that but I've updated it since then that has to-dos in it, will populate those to-dos into Todoist. The other thing you could do if you're a little more of a power user and you want to get a little more granular on what exactly you are putting into Evernote, you can actually use the Evernote's advanced search options. If you've ever used Evernote, one of the things you can do is you can actually build searches that you can save searches, right? Which are basically queries that have like tag colon and the tag, notebook. You can do it on notebook, you can do it on date created, things like that. You can do a bunch of very specific things to narrow down what you want to go in to do it. But I think that's more powerful than most people need. And you're likely going to use the tag option 90% of the time. Just create like a to-do tag or a to-do _ Todoist or whatever type tag that you want that indicates that you want this to go over to Todoist, and just add that. I'm going to do it with the notebook just because it's easier to demo and it doesn't mess up my entire system. So what I'm going to do here is use my notebook here, Todoist integration test. You can actually group tasks for to-dos as well. So you can click on the eye and it'll group all to-dos from one note under one parent task. So that's typically what you're going to want to do. That's the default setting. And I'll show you what that looks like when we get into Todoist. Then there's the destination. That's Todoist in this case. And this is going to say, where do I want to put my tasks that I created in Evernote in Todoist? What project specifically? By default, it uses the inbox, which is sort of the default landing page for all tasks in Todoist that are not assigned to a project. Conversely, you can also come over down here, click this check, and then because this is integrated to Todoist, when I hit this drop down where it says root, it'll actually show me all my projects that are open in Todoist, that are actually defined in Todoist, excuse me. But I'm going to just put it into inbox. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I might be working in Evernote and I might have multiple projects that I might have one note that goes into project A, then the next note goes into project B. Rather than have to change it every time coming in here, which kind of defeats the purpose of the automation, instead what I'll do is I'll put it into inbox and then just farm it out once I get into Todoist. Here's actually what the to-do will look like inside of Todoist. So this is the settings section, and you can define sort of like the schema of the name of the to-do. So by default, it uses the notebook, then the note itself, then to-do. You might want to say, I don't care, I don't need note in here, which I'm actually going to delete that and just say, hey, I just want the note name and then the to-do. You might even just want to simplify it even more and just put the name of the to-do in there. I typically like to have the note because then I at least know which to-dos are associated together versus, because I might have 3 or 4 notes worth of to-dos going into Todoist. It's nice to be able to sort it. It's just another way to sort it. You could also have here a parent task title template, which has the notebook and the note, but not the to-do itself. And then you have synchronization options. So there's several different ways you can synchronize it. You don't have to synchronize it at all. You can just turn this off as an example, and then it won't synchronize labels for to-do. So basically, in Evernote you have tags, and in Todoist you have labels. They're basically the same thing. They're tags, but Todoist chooses to call them labels. And what you can actually do is when you build your note in Evernote, if you know that this is going to be in Todoist, you can not only put in your to-do tag that says, hey, this needs to go to Todoist, excuse me, but you can also put in other tags that might correspond to labels on Todoist side. And if they don't, it'll create them into Todoist. The nice thing about that is now you have a common tagging system, at least for to-dos, across both Evernote and Todoist. I'm going to turn it back on because I like doing that synchronization, but you can certainly turn it off. And the other thing you can do, and Pleexy does a great job of giving you some control here, is define whether it's bi-directional, one directional, or no sync between them. And by default, it's bi-directional, and that's what I recommend you use. But you may say, you know what, I only want tags coming from Evernote going into becoming labels in Todoist, but I don't want my labels in Todoist going back. So if I add a new label to this after the fact, once this becomes a task in Todoist, I don't want that to sync back to Evernote. Conversely, I can come down here, for example, and say, you know what, I don't want any of my tags going over to being part of the task in Todoist, but if I do add a label when I'm working in Todoist, have that become a tag in Evernote on that note. And lastly, I can just say, you know what, I don't want anything to happen. I want my tags to stay over here and my labels to stay over here, and never the two shall cross. I recommend using the bi-directional. It's the default, and it works the best in my opinion. Here is the behavior of what happens in Todoist when I send something from Evernote. So when I could delete a to-do in Evernote, you have two options. Either delete the corresponding task that's in Todoist, which is what I recommend, because obviously if you're deleting it, it means it's complete. It's not a relevant task anymore. It's not that you're completing it; it's that it's not relevant anymore. And as a result, if it's not relevant in Evernote, it's probably not going to be relevant in Todoist. So leave that there. But you can also say do not touch task, which means that when I do something in Evernote, it doesn't update Todoist. But that doesn't make any sense to me. And the second one is when you complete the to-do. And then obviously you can mark it completed in Todoist. After you've marked it complete in Evernote, it'll automatically mark itself complete in Todoist. Or you can, again, do not touch task, meaning that if I mark it complete in Evernote, it won't tell Todoist mark it complete in Todoist. Again, the default is to mark it complete, and I recommend you do that. And then this is the behavior for anything I do in Todoist. What happens to the original to-do inside of Evernote? And you have one option here, one category here that you can do, which is when a task is completed in Todoist, you can either mark it complete in Evernote, which is what I recommend, or don't touch it in Evernote. And you have a preview button. So the nice thing about the preview button, in my opinion, is that it allows you to see what you're going to do before you do it. You don't want to, if you make a mistake, so let's say I wanted to, it says it hasn't been updated in the last 45 days. I might say it hasn't been updated in the last, let's say 180 days. And that ends up giving me a bunch of extra stuff. And I see that it ends up dumping a lot of stuff. It'll end up dumping a lot of things that I don't want in Todoist from Evernote. So rather than like having that done and having to go in and delete them all, either in Evernote or Todoist, to get them out and clean everything up, what I can do is hit preview first and just see what would happen and how many items would I have going. And if I see that the number is extraneous, like it's a gigantic number of changes that are going to happen, I can say, you know what, no, I don't want to make that change, and I might adjust the number accordingly. It saves the trouble of creating bad data into Todoist. And with Todoist, especially in any task manager, you really want to keep the cruft out of it. The idea is of a task manager is that you really want it to be clean. It's just the stuff I am committed to doing that needs to get done, and everything else does not belong there. And the minute you start putting other things in there, or you end up with stuff that you didn't expect to be in there, really doesn't belong. If you get enough of that stuff in there, it starts to bury the things that are essential. And also, the more things you have in a task manager, generally, the less likely you're going to use the task manager, because you get overwhelmed. At least I know that's in my case. So I try to keep it clean, keep it actionable, and keep it simple. And this is a feature that kind of helps with that. And then lastly, whenever you make any changes in here, or you set this up for the first time, you have to click the Save Changes button. I didn't actually do this the first time I set it up. I set everything up and then exited it out. And then when I logged back in later on, I was disappointed to see that all my settings were gone. So click the Save Changes for any changes you make, which I'm going to do right now. It says I don't have any tasks because I haven't built any yet into an Evernote. Because what happens is when you click Save or you build the thing, it actually tells you how many tasks are going to be generated going into Todoist before you actually process it, which is really cool. So, and there you are. It gives you sort of a screen of how everything's going to work. And the next section, I'm going to talk to you about, we're going to create some tasks in Evernote and then watch them sync over into Todoist, and we're going to show the interactions between Evernote and Todoist and back again. So stay tuned. Okay, let's get started. So I have Evernote here open on the left, and I'm going to create a simple note. This is a simple note. And I'm going to create a couple of checkboxes here. Let's see, schedule call, pick up groceries, take notes, lesson, publish YouTube video. These are just a bunch of random ones, as you see. And I'll enter twice, and that's done. Now that that's entered, I'm going to hit sync just to sync it up real quick. And then I'm going to come over here to my Todoist here. It only takes a minute or two to get through. Okay, and as you can see, I now in Todoist in my inbox, I have a main task here, which is basically my note. Right, the note itself is the main part, and then the sub bullets here are all the individual tasks I have. So what I'm going to do is let me click one of these complete, and that one now, the schedule call one, should be checked off in Evernote. So we'll go over to Evernote. And then again, it takes a couple of seconds to do this. It takes about a minute or so for it to sync to go through, depending on how often you're hitting the sync button. But it takes about a minute or two for them to sync between each other. Okay, and as you can see here, in my, if we go over here to Evernote, schedule calls now ticked as checked, right? So that's how that works. Now, what happens if I check something here, complete, like pick up, let's say I click pick up groceries as complete. Let's see what happens in Todoist. So we'll come over to Todoist. We'll ask it to sync. Okay, and there it goes. So as you can see, it's bi-directional, and so when I check off a task here in Todoist, it checks it off in Evernote. When I check it off in Evernote, it checks it off in Todoist. And I'm going to do one more here just so you can see it. So this take notes from lesson, I'm going to mark as complete. Okay, and now you can see take notes on lesson has been check marked. So it's really cool that you're able to sort of, when you change it in one system, it automatically changes the other, vice versa. And that eliminates double entry, which is really cool. Because so when you're, again, in Evernote, you're banging out some note and you want to add a couple of to-dos with this service, you could basically set it up to automatically sync into Todoist. And when you, if you have a bunch of those check marks, when you update it in Todoist, it automatically updates your note in Evernote for those tasks. So again, it's a nice automated system, and it really works well. I was pleasantly surprised at how well the Pleexy service works. It's very simple to set up, and it works as advertised. It basically knocks it out. And if you have that need for getting things out of Evernote into Todoist, to me, it's the best solution out there. It's in terms of easy to set up. You can customize it to your heart's content, and you can really sort of manage your tasks and have the cross sync. The cross sync for me is the big one. The ability to check something off in one and have it automatically check off in the other. is really powerful, especially if you find yourself constantly sort of creating to-dos in Evernote, but you also use Todoist as your task manager. Having sort of one, with the synchronization, it makes it feel like one database, even though it's really not. It makes it feel like that in a lot of ways. Well, I hope this video was helpful to you. Again, if you like this video, please click the like button, as it really helps out my channel. If you want to see more videos from me on Evernote, Todoist, and a variety of other productivity apps, please click the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified of new videos, please click the bell. And if you're new to Todoist, if you're a Todoist user and you need a brush up or a review of Todoist, I highly recommend you check out my video, my beginner's guide to Todoist. I'm going to link it above. It takes you from assuming you know nothing about Todoist all the way to being able to use labels and filters and projects and reminders and everything you need to know to use Todoist effectively. It covers all of that. And so if you're feeling like you need a brush up on your Todoist, check it out. Thanks.